Everybody, the simple handicap for Tuesday, October 8th. Thank you for making me a part of your morning. Before we jump into the NFL market rundown for NFL week number 6, just want to say to everybody in Florida, in the Carolinas, with all of the weather coming up in the next couple of days and how serious things are looking, as well as what happened a week or two ago with everything that came through storm-wise there. Hope everything is going as well as it can. I'm not able to relate to what the situation is, being from the Pacific Northwest up in Canada, but I do know that things are looking very severe, and a lot of folks from that area do listen to the podcast, so I just wanted to acknowledge that early on and just say that hopefully things go as well as they can in the next coming days, as things are looking pretty serious down that way, and not too much that I can do or offer, but I think it's worth noting for everybody listening to the podcast how serious that situation is beginning to look. Let's get into the NFL market rundown for week number 6. Week number 5 ended last night with a positive result. Kansas City wins and covers. 2-0 week for the service on sides and totals. 0-1 for props. 2-1 total. 31-19-2. 62% for the season over on the NFL service. If you're interested in following the service, head over to raspicks.com/NFL. Takeaways from the game: Kansas City, New Orleans, Monday Night Football. I'd say there were 2 of them. Number 1, Chiefs dominated for 4 quarters, and it's incredible how Kareem Hunt and Juju Smith-Schuster, who have been really irrelevant for the last 3 to 4 seasons, able to break out and have a big game when the Chiefs need it most. We saw the Chiefs going into the bye, I thought, empty the playbook a little bit, especially early on in that game. Needed it in the red zone with some of the late drives, but that's incredible what we're getting out of the Chiefs every single week. 5-0. DVOA has them playing the most difficult schedule to date. I think you can nitpick some of the teams that they have faced, maybe not being at full strength or a bit of a different version when the Chiefs face them. But still, for Kansas City to overcome everything that they have and get to 5-0 heading into the bye where they have extra time to tinker, extra time to work, incredibly impressive to see this run of games that they have been able to put together. And it looks like a team now shifting to 2 and 3 tight end, even 4 tight end usage is going to unlock a lot of creativity that we saw them establish last year. Incredible from Kansas City, and that D-line just dominant and able to take over games. For the Saints, we're seeing this O-line begin to crumble. It was a concern coming into the year. Now it's just so beat up. When you face an elite defensive front like that, similar to what we saw from the Eagles, albeit not as elite as what we saw from the Chiefs, but Kansas City just pressed all of those issues, and it's going to be a problem for the Saints going forward. Derek Carr answered his post-game presser yesterday, saying his injury was not good. Some of the Twitter doctors online are estimating that it is a 1 to 3 week injury for him, potentially, if not longer. Let's see what the MRI shows today, but it's certainly going to be a drop to Jake Haener if that is going to be the case going forward for the Saints, at least maybe for one game, if not more. All of that said, let's get to the market rundown and look forward to NFL week number 6. Thursday Night Football. It's the San Francisco 49ers on the road at the Seattle Seahawks. 49ers taking a bit of money. All of those threes that were in the market taken out were at 3.5 this morning. Some soft 3.5 showing as well on the board, but 3.5 minus 10 at Chris, 3.5 even at Pinnacle. Everywhere else, 3.5 left to right across the screen. Some under money into the market too, bit surprising to me. I sort of echoed those sentiments on the podcast Sunday evening, reacting to the openers, albeit high number relative to what a lot of models are going to say. But both of these teams with some potential defensive issues, and offensively, when forced to chase, we're looking at 2 teams that are going to be very explosive. So let's see how this total hangs up the rest of the week. On to Sunday, London game, Jacksonville, Chicago. Bears were as high as a 2.5-point favorite, and that was effectively the point of resistance, whether that was some buys once it got to minus 15 to 3 coming back the other way, or 2.5s being taken out. We saw Jags money come back into the market at that point. I think it now just becomes a question of how are you pricing Chicago. We saw the Bears close at home minus 3 2 weeks ago against the LA Rams. We saw them close minus 4 against the Carolina Panthers. Are you able to put that Jags team in that same category as those two? As we're looking at the Bears now minus 2 or 2.5 yesterday morning when that bet was made on a neutral field, certainly now putting Jacksonville arguably on that same level as Carolina, depending what you're giving as a home field advantage for them at home. Now, in this game, I can't help but look at the Jags. That coaching staff, a lot more familiar with what's going on in London. They've been there. They've done it. All the players have been there and done it, less some rookies for the Jags, obviously, but it's a familiar scenario for them on the road going to London. For the Bears, very different scenario, as you have a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams that will have to deal with all the media. It's a staff going over and making the rare London game for the Bears. Very different and contrasting scenarios. I don't really know how that should be priced in or not into the market, but I can't help but look at it. The Bears offense certainly looking better the last 2 weeks, but it's come against some weak defenses. The Jags certainly fit that category as a weak defense, allowing nearly 400 yards a game. It's been ugly in a lot of these games for the Jags with a ton of press coverage. Interesting matchup between these two teams as we look forward to that London game early on Sunday. Washington on the road at the Baltimore Ravens. Commanders money continues to leak into the market. What was 7 is now down to a flat 6 at Chris, but the over money, it's another Commanders game that's just dead over. We're up to 53, the highest total of the NFL season at Chris so far. We've seen so many totals this season. I shouldn't say so many. We've seen a handful of them. 50, 51. That's been like the breaking point. And then it's under money coming into the market. This has been one way to the over since open. It's getting up there at a big price. We're seeing it get pushed up. I, at 53, would have a hard time imagining that it goes further. We'll see. That's a big number for a total in 2024, but that is an absolutely horrendous Washington Commanders defense that has really not been tested the last few weeks on this run. And when they have been, it's just been the offense outscoring, so it could very well be justified for this total. Arizona on the road at the Green Bay Packers. Cardinals money comes into the market yesterday down to Packers, a flat 5-point favorite on the board. Total in this game holding steady at 49.5. Waiting to see for Green Bay what is going on with Romeo Doubs. There's suspicion that he is going to be back playing for the team after the 1-week suspension. Not really sure what to make of that scenario. Always enjoy seeing tweets and info from Sam Hoppen. He had a breakdown of how the Packers are effectively what they were at this point in time a season ago. Incredibly boomer bust on offense, massive splits between EPA per play and success rate. Same thing is happening on defense. Really relying on the explosive play, really relying on turnover. It's boomer bust on the defense too. And we saw last year things really level out. What it's doing is bringing a ton of variance into these Packers games at this point in the season like it did a year ago. We're looking at the Arizona Cardinals on the other side, a team with that defense in the state it is in, contributing to a lot of variance as well. This is a game with a massive range of outcomes, both for the side and total. It's a very interesting handicap going forward. Houston on the road at the New England Patriots. Houston still a soft 7-point favorite for just a schnick of time yesterday. There was a 6.5 showing on the board. It was taken out right away. And that's something that I probably would expect to be the case the rest of the week. There's probably a segment of folks in the betting market who are seeing these underdogs north of 6 points just cover at a ridiculous rate. The average point spread per game at this point in the NFL season is the lowest it has been in more than 15 years. Games are very tight. Games are very close. And we are seeing very short spreads in a lot of games. And anytime we get a bigger number, there's a lot of intrigue for the dog. But in this case with New England, just riddled with defensive injuries, riddled with offensive line injuries. And now there seems to really be a bit of a groundswell internally to get Drake May as the starting quarterback. We're seeing Gerard Mayo really waffle for the first time since that waffling that he had coming out of the preseason prior to week 1. I would say it's an outside chance that May would start in this game. Some speculation I saw that Brissett would start, and then it would be May coming in later in the game. I think if you're the Pats and you're waiting this long, why are you putting Drake May in under center against this Texans defense? It seems like a very odd spot for them to do that. Hard to buy into that happening this week. But then what kind of spot does that put Jacoby Brissett in, knowing that this effectively might be the last game? And apparently, based on what we're seeing, the locker room doesn't necessarily want him to be out there to begin with, which in some ways is hard to believe too. It's just a mess right now in New England, and you wonder, has the bottom fell out of this Pats team? Tampa Bay on the road at the Saints. We don't have a number on this game. I would be very surprised based on Carr's comments post-game as well as some of the early reports on the injury, if Carr was able to start in this game. Tampa Bay has already left Tampa Bay. If they didn't leave yesterday evening, they're leaving this morning. I don't have the exact details, but they're getting out ahead of the storm. They're going to spend the entire week away from Tampa Bay to prepare for this game. If this is Todd Bowles in a disrupted week of prep, I still think you have to give him a pretty big advantage, possibly getting both Cansey and Winfield back on the defensive side in this game against what should be Jake Haener. We've seen Bowles his entire career make young quarterbacks look really silly at times, and you have Haener stepping behind a decimated offensive line for the Saints. This seems like a very bad matchup for New Orleans. The Saints were 2.5-point favorites on the look-ahead. I don't envision a scenario where the Saints, if Haener is confirmed as the quarterback, are closing as a favorite in this game. Certainly, question is, does this get to the other side of 3 for Tampa Bay? That's probably the stopping point that we see with Carr going out and Haener stepping in. Whether that's Bucks minus 2.5, maybe it leans to 3. It's a massive advantage for Tampa Bay. But with all that said, in a very weird season of NFL and matchups, you have this kind of unpredictable scenario for the Bucks to have to deal with and everything going on back home for them. So that's kind of another unknown that's thrown into here. It's just been the way the season has gone. You have these really clear angles that you want to bet into or play against or pick and choose your spots. And then there's just this massive negative that's leaning over a team that's kind of unforeseen, and the Bucs certainly fit that scenario this week. Cleveland on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles as I hit the microphone and bang it around. Pardon me if your earbuds got a bit of a shock on that one. Hopefully it didn't shake you up too much. It is the Eagles 9-point favorites, and as we mentioned, those big dogs, they're getting bet. We saw this as high as 9.5 yesterday. 9.105 at Chris, 8.5 the rest of the way across the board. Total at 43.5, shaded to the under. Brown and Smith both projected to be back. Lane Johnson projected to be back for the Eagles. So it's a much healthier Philly team than what we've seen. Lane Johnson and A.J. Brown both practiced on the Friday pre-bye against the Buccaneers. So their positive outlook. The bigger question for me was Smith, but if he's through the protocol, he should be good to go in this game. So it's a big upgrade for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, in this game, I think a couple things for Cleveland you have to watch. Locker room seems to be turning on Deshaun Watson based on reports that are coming out from around the team. Stefanski is inclined to play him, but there's also the Amari Cooper trade watch potentially as those rumors get escalated a bit, along with Devontae Adams. Is there the potential that he gets moved? I don't have insight to speculate on that, but a lot of negatives certainly around Cleveland. We are seeing Watson's performance through 5 weeks just get absolutely torched on Twitter. Rightfully so, with some of the stats that are coming out, comparing him to the last 750 quarterbacks that have played in the NFL, and he's around 745. Oddly enough, right around that same spot with Will Levis, who we'll talk about in just a second. But performance-wise, it's been absolutely horrendous, and you wonder what's going to change on the road here against the Eagles. But the market is looking at these big numbers, looking at the Eagles with a bad defense, and that's just with this short of a total and number that's being bet in this range all season long. Indianapolis on the road at the Tennessee Titans. Here's Will Levis. He's dealing with an injury, uncertain to play for this game. We saw no market reaction on the news that came out yesterday. We have to wait and see what that status looks like. Mason Rudolph in relief wasn't amazing. I don't think that we were watching the Titans against the Dolphins and saying, like, this is a team that looks significantly better with Rudolph on the field. It was quite underwhelming. And I think the coaching staff as a whole has been quite underwhelming as well. If it is a Rudolph game, at this point, I'm not sure it matters what quarterback is under center facing the Indianapolis Colts. There's going to be success had. And I look at the Titans in this spot as a team with either quarterback, especially so if there's a change made, it is Rudolph, and God forbid we see a bit of a discount in this line, maybe a half point or a point move. Potentially there's the Richardson and Taylor combination of news that could push this number up. Everything that I read yesterday, which I will summarize in better detail tomorrow on the breakdown, is just absolutely taking shots at Gus Bradley for trying to break down how bad this defense is, how injured this defense is, how big of a problem it is. if Tennessee is ever going to represent the offense we expected they would be coming into the preseason, it would be in this game against the Colts. I would be very surprised with either quarterback if it's not a Bears versus Rams or Bears versus Panthers scenario in a similar manner in this matchup with how bad the Colts defense is looking. And because of that, we are seeing this total get bet up with uncertainty on both quarterbacks. We are seeing 41.5 now as high as 43.5. And this was a game that was definitely leaning towards 44. We didn't get to that key, but that's a pretty noteworthy move given the context of this. Chargers on the road at the Broncos, LA -3, total 35.5. Would have loved to have a piece of the LA Chargers going up. This was taken out Sunday night after the preview podcast and the reaction to the opening odds. There was a release from a bettor yesterday at 2.5 to push this to 3. There was a contrasting release from another bettor at 3 that I thought would have pushed this back, and I saw it come out, and I was like, hey, this is going to come back in range. It didn't. We're locked in at 3. Herbert expected to be healthier. It looks like Joe Alt is going to be back and playing in this game at right tackle. Slater with an outside chance to return as well. Derwin James back from the suspension. Chargers getting a lot of pieces back out of the bye. It's going to be healthier. It's going to be probably the best we've seen them look this season. The Broncos defense has been awesome. A much different task defending how the Chargers offense is approaching this game with the willingness to let Herbert throw more than what the Broncos have faced in the Raiders or the Jets in the rain or some of the other offenses that they've looked really good against. This is just a different class, and you have Harbaugh and the coaching staff out of the bye against Sean Payton. That looks very much like a mismatch too. So lots of positive sentiment this week for the LA Chargers. Pittsburgh on the road at the Las Vegas Raiders. Steelers 3 -105, 3 even money at Circa and Buckeye, continuing to keep an eye on the Justin Fields situation with the Steelers. Total from 38.5 down to 36.5. Atlanta on the road at the Carolina Panthers. Atlanta -5.5 was taken out by a release yesterday. We're up to 6 -115. This number got to 6.5 yesterday. That was the point of resistance. Again, you never know if is 6.5 truly taken out or was there some buys to 7. But that money came in on Carolina after the release. We're now at a bit of a softer 6, leaning back towards the 5.5. You start to wonder with Atlanta, with Kirk Cousins post-game talking about how he was willing to let it rip. He was more comfortable in the offense. Zach Robinson talking about how he was allowing Kirk Cousins to operate more freely in the passing game, 500-plus yards. Like, is that the game where everything for the Falcons offense clicks and continues to roll? Against the Panthers defense with so many injuries, you might think so, but like, where does price come into play here? It's the Falcons in a much different role, a much different scenario, laying the points on the road. The Panthers clearly back down to earth. We're seeing the premium that was on them happily went against last week with the Bears. That's no longer there. This is really leveled out for price, and now it's a question of just, can this Panthers offense that sustained injuries on the offensive line come into this game against the Falcons and do enough to outscore the deficit that their defense is absolutely going to put them in. But you're getting them in a much different scenario and a much different price in this spot. Detroit on the road at the Dallas Cowboys. Detroit a 3 -120 favorite across the board, leaning towards 3.5, total from 51 up to 53. More defensive injuries to Dallas to watch for tomorrow when the injury report comes out. Detroit coming out of the bye, looking to be a little bit healthier than they were in that Monday night game against Seattle. Lions taking money in this spot as this number trends towards 3.5. Cincinnati on the road at the Giants. Sunday Night Football was 5 on the look ahead. We're down to 3 -124 at Chris this morning. 3 -125 at Buckeye. Giants money into the market. Would fully expect Malik Neighbors to be back. Bit early to speculate. Concussion protocol, albeit was not practicing last week. Was it caution? Was it effects of the concussion? Not made super clear. We'll get more information about that today and into tomorrow. If he's back, that's certainly a boost for the Giants offense. I think the big question here is how much was the spot for the Giants going to Seattle with the extra rest, with the extra prep, with Seattle on negative rest, with the short week. Seattle said they underestimated the Giants. They were underprepared. It's a young coaching staff going through those steps. They haven't. How much of that was making the Giants look better than they are? Cincinnati offensively, I mean, continue to be dominant with all these pieces they have. Joe Burrow is playing at an extremely high level. It's been the defense that is struggling. So is this a spot of reprieve for the Bengals defense after what they faced the last couple of weeks? Possibly. Little surprised to see this get down as low as it currently is. And then Monday Night Football, Bills on the road at the New York Jets. Buffalo, a minus 2.5-point favorite. Total in this game down to as low as 40.5. A couple threes showed very briefly for the Buffalo Bills. This was 3.5 taken back the other way. Johnson expected to be back for this game for the Buffalo Bills. We're going to see that middle with Bernard possibly back as well. I'm pretty sure I just mixed both of them up, but it's likely we see both Bernard and Johnson back in the middle of this defense for Buffalo, keeping an eye on the status of Rapp as well, and obviously Shakir, who his absence was very notable against the Houston Texans. What's he going to be? And then for the Jet side, keeping an eye early on Aaron Rodgers, as well as the Devontae Adams watch. It seems like every hour there's another tweet that says, it's coming, it's happening, this is it. Don't know what we're going to expect from that. It would certainly have an impact on this number, as would the Bills' injuries, as would any Aaron Rodgers injury that is possible. And it wasn't like a resounding endorsement that he is going to be good to go for this game. I would fully expect him to play, considering he finished that game on Sunday in London. But it's been a weird season, and it's a weird one for the Jets overall. So let's see a lot of news to come that would impact this game, and perhaps that was what influenced some of those threes being taken out early on the board. That'll do it for me this Tuesday morning. Have a fantastic day, everybody. We'll talk to you again bright and early back here tomorrow on the podcast feed.